I want my friends and neighbors in Toronto to take note. This Liberal Justice Minister is looking back at things that happened over 10 years ago while he's been here for 9 years and takes zero responsibility for crime getting worse. Imagine that, getting elected to serve your constituents, sitting here for 9 years and can't take a single bit of responsibility for a problem that he should be trying to fix. Mr. Speaker, it's very, very clear. Crime is worse. The Liberal MPs elected to serve Toronto are failing to do their job. When will they stop choosing the Prime Minister over the people?
This is what a politician should strive to be like. Right to the point, clear and concise. The meltdown continues. Canadian politicians are still trying to wrap their heads around the reality, the very fortunate reality that Donald Trump has been elected as 47th president of the United States, and Canada is not prepared. Canada is not prepared in the slightest. At least our sitting government is not prepared, because one of Donald Trump's promises, and he said he's staying true to every single thing he's promised on his campaign trail, is he's going to be deporting 18 million people. He gets in on January 20th, January 21st. He's beginning the deportation process of 18 million people. Now, there's only like a few of those people have migrated illegally, like snuck in from Canada to America. And it's not really all Canadian born citizens that have done that, if any at all. It's people that have come here through immigration or refugee status, and then they've snuck into America. So only a small amount of people, are going to be deported back to Canada. But the issue is that people are going to be running away from their deportation fate. And that's where our borders need to be extremely the most secured. We need to build a wall, an ice wall. And politicians in Canada are not prepared for that. So we're going to be taking a look at that today. Minister Francois Charbonne, I like to call him the Liberal Chihuahua. He sits down for primetime politics, and they have a bit of a one-on-one. And then we're going to be taking a look at the question period highlights from today. So welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this interview.
Listen, during the course of this campaign, we heard from Mr. Trump. He's promising to impose tariffs of 10%, 20% on all imports going into the United States. And as you know, Canada, more than 70% of our exports actually go to the U.S. Do Canadians have to brace themselves for some tough economic times?
Oh, yeah.
First of all, let's take it step by step. We're day one. This morning, we congratulated President Trump on his victory. We're going to see which kind of policy his teams want to put forward. We've already been in contact with a number of the people, the Republicans and people in his entourage. The good thing I would say is that we are very prepared. We've been, you recall and you mentioned this Team Canada effort where we talk to business leaders, political leaders, both Republican and Democrats for months now. So we are well connected, I would say, and we're making the case for Canada. One of the difference in 2024 than the last Trump presidency is that our supply chain are more integrated. And that's one thing that we obviously always mention in our discussion. The three things that always interest our American friends, the first one is security. I think they see the world in a very much a security lens in terms of the North, the Arctic, and today national security is economic security. So that's kind of the first one, and say we are your best partner when it comes to security for North America. The second thing is supply chain resiliency. Coming out of COVID, I think that.
But Canada we're not prepared to secure anything in terms of military status. Like, we're certainly not prepared to secure the North. For crying out loud, Justin Trudeau last year couldn't even shoot down a Chinese weather balloon, right? This was mentioned in yesterday's question period by the leader of the opposition, Pierre. Canada's, security is not good. Anytime anything happens, it's like a little kid. We just say, hey, mommy or daddy, please help, please help. And we're always calling the United States for everything, the smallest things. It's pathetic.
What you hear is that people have understood now, and my job and our job has been to connect the dots, is that, for example, think about critical minerals. Most of the critical minerals needed for the prosperity and the resilience of the United States are going to be coming from Canada. You're talking about semiconductors in terms of packaging and testing. You're talking about energy. So in terms of the supply chain, we are far more integrated. So in a sense that a decision on one side of the border would have an impact on both. And lastly, I would say what we've been talking with our American friends is a growth agenda for North America, understanding that there's a lot of turbulence in the world, there's a lot of challenges, but we want them to see us from just being kind of the good neighbor to the strategic partner. In Washington, they often refer to us as the indispensable relationship for the prosperity and growth in North America. And that's really what we're putting forward with our American friends.
And I certainly understand that's the Canadian argument. It's security, supply chains, prosperity, except that when you look at this president, we know that he does not like the Prime Minister. He has called Justin Trudeau.
He does not.
Dishonest, weak, two-faced. How will that
two-faced, blackface,
have an effect
Castro's son,
on the bilateral relationship between our two countries?
Well, they know each other, and that's a good thing. You know, I've been doing that for 10 years. I was foreign minister during part of President Trump's previous administration. The good thing that Canadians should feel reassured, that is a team that has the experience and expertise, in a sense that we have dealt with a Trump administration. We know the people that were there then, and some likely to be with him on this term. We have had to deal with these issues that you mentioned. So in a sense, there's no one better place, I would say, than the team in place to deal with that, because we've been there before. And now, in addition to that, we've been preparing for that. So we're well prepared in front of any scenarios that could be presented. We stood up for Canadian workers, industry, and we're going to do the same exactly now. One thing that they know is that...
Yeah, no, that's factually a lie. These this cap on emissions that they're trying to do in Alberta is going to cut over, I think it's 120,000 jobs, like minimum. And this is an ongoing lawsuit that Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is putting forward to the Liberal federal government. Or another way of looking at it is Danielle Smith is suing Justin Trudeau for putting this cap on emissions. Like this current government in Canada is not pro-business. It's not pro-growth. We are sitting on the sidelines and we're watching the American economy. Like, they're literally going to fix themselves. It's going to be phenomenal for America, which is great. But I don't want to be constantly cheering on America and the prosperity of America. I also want to be cheering on Canada because I live here and I'm Canadian, right? Yes, the American economy is phenomenal for its growth, for people that have, money in American stocks and American investments, people that hold, USD and things like that. But again, I'm Canadian. I don't plan on moving to America. I would like to stay here for my entire life. I absolutely love Canada, but we need a pro-business strategy and a pro-business government here in Canada. And Pierre Poilievre is, he's definitely going to be a lot better than the Liberals right now. But it's going to be a challenge for Pierre to go up or toe to toe with Donald Trump, with the amount of tariffs that they're each going to throw on each other and stuff. And hopefully they can come to some sort of positive agreement that's beneficial to both of our countries. But man, Canada, if we don't have a big boom, a big business boom, and a lot of investments into our economy here, and see the the Toronto Stock Exchange just kind of explode simultaneous to the S&P kind of going up, I think we're heading in the wrong direction. Now the world is a lot more positive now that Donald Trump, in terms of money, the world is like very, very green right now. Everyone's throwing money into the market. Everyone's happy that Donald Trump is won in terms of their money, making more money. But the Liberals, they leave it to them to mess it up. Absolutely. Like we need an election ASAP, man. We got to get these people out of here.
We stand up for Canada. That is something that the Trump administration know. They've seen it before and will be prepared to do it again. But the spirit in which we're talking now is strategic partner in security, making sure that chain and talking about a growth agenda, because you know what, that's what our Republican friend want to hear. When I'm with them, they say, we like you, you talk business. And in a world like that, Canada becomes an essential partner to the United States. That's what we're going to be putting forward, and it also gives us leverage in any negotiation that our colleagues, governors, senators, business leaders understand that the interaction, that the decision on one side of the border would have an impact on both.
Except that, you know, Mr. Trump operates very independently of other Republicans, how other diplomats might view Canada and international relations. And if he does not like Justin Trudeau, as he has stated in the past, will there be efforts on the behalf of your government to try to repair that relationship?
Well, I would say we've been engaging for them. I mean, the Team Canada initiative put forward by the Prime Minister was part of that, in the sense that to make sure that we would have relationship on both sides. I mean, we've been trading with the United States for at least, well, for far more than a century. So we've been working with both Democrat and Republican administration. We have the playbook. We know how to engage. And that's why, you know, I am confident that the work that we've done is going to pay off now, because we have the relationship. We have a leverage point when it comes to supply chain, and we're also a key partner when it comes to the security of North America. And I would say in the world, which has changed significantly since the last Trump administration, you know, in a world which is fraught with turbulence on all sorts of fronts, I think it's reassuring for American friends to know that they can always count on Canada, and that we are a trusted partner. And that we're going to be working together to advance a North American growth agenda.
And I appreciate you have very little time here, but I do want to ask one more question of you, though, Mr. Champagne, because Mr. Trump says that he will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. You mentioned critical minerals, and he not only says he'll end the mandate, he's also promising to rescind many of the incentives for EV production from the Biden Inflation Reduction Act. Your government has committed billions in EV battery manufacturing. Do you now need to revisit that industrial strategy, since Trump is signaling a change in what the U.S. is willing to do?
Well, the good thing is that we had a record level of investments in the country. That's a good thing. And, you know, we were smart.
No, we didn't have a record level of investments. Again, this is blatant lying. Canada paid these Volkswagen to have their battery plant here. Canada paid for a lot of these people to come here. A lot of these businesses to get set up in Canada. We're not having record-breaking investments. We're literally bribing people to come here. That is not good. That's not a good that's not a good indicator of how an economy is doing. But you got to bribe businesses to come here. No. They should be coming on their own. It's blatant lying, sir.
Because we're talking about production credit, production support, which assumed that you have to build the asset before. So I would say the way Canada did it was smart, was strategic, was very focused. You know, like I said, this is day one after the election. Let's see what is going to be put forward by the next U.S. administration. And like I said, we're always going to be making sure that we remain competitive, that we attract investments like we've done, and continue to seize generational opportunities. And I can tell you, I've already exchanged with some business folks in the United States this morning, and you know, they understand the need for that very indispensable relationship, as we call it in Washington, and they are grateful that we have these relationships now well established, to make sure that we support the Canadian agenda, but at the same time that we make sure that everyone understands in the United States that we are their best partner to ensure the growth and resiliency in North America.
What I personally think, just off the top of my head here, what I personally think would be a phenomenal move is we're heading into a digital world. Like, whether you want it or not, everything is digital. And in terms of the stock market growth, all the tech stocks are booming. Like, the most valued company, more than Canada's GDP, is a singular company, NVIDIA, which is graphics cards, which is in like most, if not all, like computers, right? And so everyone is going to be like pro Bitcoin and pro cryptocurrency at some point. I think Canada should be investing in this. We should put like $1 billion into a massive warehouse, in the north somewhere so that we don't have to worry about air conditioning and cooling and just mine the hell out of crypto and stockpile it. And then we'll have a massive Bitcoin reserve because Canada doesn't want gold. So might as well have digital gold. And then we should also be leasing off some of our land to other countries like America so they can do the same. We have natural refrigerators and freezers. Canada is so blessed. You say, okay, this part here of the north that no one really lives in, you get this massive plot of land. We're going to bill you. We're going to get some of your royalties, but you're free to set up, a massive crypto mining farm or whatever the heck it is that you want, right? That would be like phenomenal for our economy. That's just off the top of my head. That's not going to solve everything, but I would personally like to see that. And again, I've shared my own opinion. Now I would absolutely love to know yours. And next up, we got to take a look at the question period highlights from today. So I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. Oral questions. Questions on Honorable Andrew Scheer.
9 years of brutal assaults on Canadian energy workers. The Prime Minister just delivered a knockout punch with a production cap on oil and gas development here, which his own department admits will kill jobs and drive investment south of the border. Canadian energy company Enbridge just announced a $700 million project in the U.S. The Prime Minister is creating powerful paychecks for American workers while Canadian workers can't afford their mortgages or food. It's completely baffling why he would kill jobs here just to see them created down south. Is he getting some kind of a commission from the U.S. energy lobby for all the business he's sending them?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite is saying is simply not true. It's a cap on pollution, Mr. Speaker. In fact, production is going to go up 16% by 2030, and companies in Alberta, in the oil sands sectors, are making billion-dollar investment to make sure that workers in Alberta have a future and the energy sector has a future, and we can fight climate change at the same time, Mr.
Bro, this guy's cutting over 120,000 jobs from emissions cap.
From Regina Capel.
It's a cap on production, and his own department says it will kill jobs. And let's listen to something else that their own officials are saying. The Prime Minister's own Environment Commissioner has blasted the carbon tax as a failure. Here's some of his conclusions. Quote, the government has not made sufficient progress to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And quote, Canada remains the worst performer among all member countries of the G7. Every time the Prime Minister makes the carbon tax go up, Canada's climate performance goes down. Yet he keeps doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So why won't he call a carbon tax election so Conservatives can stop his insanity?
Wow.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party of Canada is talking about climate change. We should note this somewhere in a book because it doesn't happen very often. If only they would talk about the fact that for 10 years they did nothing, which is why we had to pick up the slack from what they... When we came into power, emissions were going to overshoot 2030 by more than 30%, Mr. Speaker. Emissions are down by 8% because of our plan, the lowest emissions in 25 years, no thanks to the Conservative Party.
Oh, man.
Just encourage all members, please, to not take the floor.
Why are we still having storms then, dude?
The Honourable Member from Regina.
Your logic is flawed.
Slack. Under their policies, Canada keeps falling on performance indexes. The only thing this carbon tax is doing is making Canadians poorer, and the results are devastating. A damning new report from the Salvation Army shows the human suffering this Prime Minister is inflicting on Canadians. Let's look at the report. First-time users of food banks shot up this year from 43% to 58%, and 1 in 4 parents are eating less so their children can eat. This is in Canada. How can he be so cold-hearted? Why won't he at least let Canadians decide in a carbon tax election?
Yeah.
The Honourable Minister for Economic Development in Quebec.
Monsieur le Président, savez-vous qui...
Mr. Speaker, do you know who has an inferiority complex in this place? It's the Conservative Party, because Canada has the lowest inflation. Interest rates are going down. Not only are we helping Canadians in need, we're building housing, we've got the family benefits, and the only ones in this place with an inferiority complex about Canada's economic resiliency is the Conservative Party.
Last week, the government's own data revealed that oil and gas is the only sector of the economy showing signs of life. And on Monday, the NDP Liberals announced a job-killing cap on oil and gas production. The government's own analysis admits that their cap on production will cost thousands of jobs and billions of dollars, destroying Canadian paychecks. No wonder Canadian-based Enbridge is building a $700 million pipeline in the United States. This Prime Minister is creating powerful paychecks for American energy workers and American steel workers, while Canadian workers can't afford their food or rent. Why is this Prime Minister driving investment jobs away from Canada towards the United States?
Stop giving jobs to America.
Environment and climate change.
Let's focus on Canada.
What the member is saying is simply false. It's a cap on pollution. Pollution is a bad thing, something the Conservative Party of Canada should understand. You want to talk about investment? Let's talk about a $2 billion investment that Strathcona, an oil company in Alberta, is making in Canada to make sure that workers in Alberta and the energy sector can have a future in a carbon-constrained world, something the Conservative Party of Canada is incapable of understanding, Mr. Speaker.
Buddy, you're going to cut 120,000 jobs in the energy sector to mark something off on a checkbox, to give something a checkbox. Are you kidding me?
Especially when the Speaker stands up and the House is quieting, that's not the time to interfere. I'll ask the Honourable Member as well from Edmonton Manning, please, to allow the responses to be given until the Honourable Member is recognized. The Honourable Member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, that minister may not understand how the energy industry works, but Canadians do. Regardless of the name, this cap is going to drive investment out of Canada, costing Canadians their jobs. It's been 9 long years of a Liberal government bent on destroying the Canadian energy sector, despite the industry being the biggest driver of the Canadian economy and employing hundreds of thousands of Canadian workers. So I'll ask the question again. Why is that extremist minister and that Prime Minister helping Donald Trump create American jobs?
Yeah, man. I like America, but I'm also living in Canada. I want to see Canada prosper.
Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Foreign direct investment, Mr. Speaker, is up in Canada. Investors are coming to Canada because we provide stability. We provide opportunity. Mr. Speaker, Canada has a long-standing history of standing up and protecting Canadian workers. And when it comes to the last NAFTA negotiations, it was the Conservative Party of Canada that asked us to back down. Well, we didn't, Mr. Speaker. We stood up for steel workers. We stood up for our auto workers. We stood up for our agricultural workers and our farmers, Mr. Speaker, and we'll do it again.
The Honourable Member from Cypress Hills, the Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost as they continue to crush the Canadian energy sector. This week, they announced their job-killing oil and gas production cap. Enbridge, a company based in Calgary, is taking their $700 million investment out of Canada to build a pipeline in America. That's jobs and powerful paychecks for American pipeliners, for American engineers, and for American truckers. Why is the Prime Minister so focused on creating powerful paychecks for Americans and not for Canadians?
People are going to be using oil and gas, whether Trudeau wants it or not. It might as well be from Canada.
Salt experts that disagree with them, but recently their go-to guy, Sylvain Charlebois, said climate change is the agri-food sector's greatest challenge and agreed that climate change is a major driver of food price inflation. So if Conservatives actually cared about elevated food prices, they'd have a plan to address climate change, but they don't. They've got nothing. No plan to address the biggest challenge in the agri-food sector. No plan to address the biggest driver of food price inflation. Now, are they going to start attacking this expert too?
This guy looks and sounds like Wreck-It Ralph. He's a big dummy.
For Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, it's time for the Liberals to get back to the real world where Canadians are struggling to eat, heat, and house themselves. While the minister tries to claim that the production cap is going to create thousands of jobs.
Dude, he's talking out half his mouth. Look at his porn stash.
The Canadian economy, billions of dollars, and that we're going to lose thousands of jobs. The Canadian oil and gas industry already provides powerful paychecks for our people. So why is the Prime Minister so hell-bent on destroying those powerful paychecks and giving them to Americans?
The mustache has spoken.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
We love powerful paychecks, Mr. Speaker. Actually, wages have...
On one hand, you got a mustache that speaks, and then you got this.
20 months, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite...
I thought I left my mop in the in the closet. Why'd she put it on her head?
David Rosenberg said U.S.-based investors should strongly consider moving from New York to Toronto, Mr. Speaker. Now, I am not a Leafs fan, Mr. Speaker, but I happen to agree with that economist, and I know that investors right around the world are looking to Canada.
The honourable member from Edmonton, Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost. The government's own analysis admits that their cap on production will cost Canadians thousands of jobs and billions of dollars. Meanwhile, we have a Canadian company who can't get a pipeline approved in Canada, investing $700 million in a U.S. project. And get this, in 2023, they increased oil and gas imports to Canada with over 40 million barrels shipped across the Atlantic from Nigeria and Saudi Arabia alone. Why is this Prime Minister so intent on funding powerful paychecks in the U.S. and everywhere else while Canadians struggle to afford food and housing?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Innovation.
Speaker, I know Conservatives like to cherry-pick per capita measures that try and talk down the Canadian economy. But in fact, if you look at per capita foreign direct investment, Canada is #1 in the world, ahead of Brazil, ahead of the United States. If you look at the IMF's projections of growth in Canada, our GDP is projected to grow more in the year 2025 than any other G7 country. We will not apologize on this side of the House for being optimistic about Canada's future.
The honourable member for Coast of Bay, Central Notre Dame.
After 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, especially for Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore oil and gas industry, where for the second year in a row, there were no bids for new exploration licenses. Energy NL says it was not unexpected, pointing to a complex, inconsistent, and burdensome regulatory system, including the only emissions cap in the world. So, Mr. Speaker, will these economic assassins get rid of that stupid cap so that we can export Canadian oil and gas instead of jobs?
There you go. People are going to be using oil and gas. Might as well come from Canada.
I'd like to
keep more jobs, grow more wealth.
In their use of language. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
50%, Mr. Speaker, 50% higher. Now, what is that, Mr. Speaker? It's the imports of foreign oil into Canada when the Conservatives were in government than we are, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to standing up for our industries, whether it's the energy sector, whether it's steel workers, whether it's agricultural workers, Mr. Speaker, there is one party in this House that does that consistently. It is the Liberal Party of Canada. The Conservatives say, give it all away, and we will not do that. We will always stand up for Canadians, our workers, and our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Come on, man.
Revelations in court filings show that there's another lawsuit against the Liberal minister from Edmonton showing that he broke the law. This one shows that his shady company and his business partner, well, he's now been directly named in this lawsuit in their search for buyers. Quote, they're going to sell this. I just updated Felix and Randy. And quote, are you confident? Really? I won't tell Shauna, Felix, and Randy yet. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, they're not worth the cost or the corruption. So will the Liberal minister from Edmonton stand up and admit to Canadians that he broke the law?
The Honourable Leader of the Government.
Let's hear it, Randy.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this issue has been dealt with by the Ethics Commissioner, who has cleared that member on 3 occasions. When it comes to his former business partner, we agree with this House. He should have been clear and answered those questions, and now he will face those consequences. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Whoa.
The honourable member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Canadians can't believe a word from these Liberals when it comes to this scandal. We know that the cabinet minister was sitting around the table while his company was applying for federal government contracts, and we know that his business lied before a parliamentary committee. But there's more explosive reporting today about the Liberal minister from Edmonton and his company fraudulently applying for government contracts. Now, experts are saying that if this is proven to be true, that the Prime Minister should expel the Minister from Cabinet. Conservatives are saying we should call the cops. So will the Prime Minister fire him today or wait till he's dragged out in handcuffs?
There you go, man. Honestly, drag him out.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is making reference to an article that came out today, and I can assure everyone in this House and those watching that the article confirms that the company in question has never received any contracts as an Indigenous business and has never been listed on the Indigenous Business Directory. And our focus is on building up Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurs through procurement. We're not going to let any members across the way try to block the progress to achieving economic reconciliation, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to work with Indigenous partners to reduce the barriers and increase participation in federal procurement.
Order. The honourable member from Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous people are outraged that government contracts meant for Indigenous businesses are being scooped up by shady companies with no Indigenous connection. Today we learned that the Minister of Employment's fraud-ridden company, Global Health Imports, claimed to be Indigenous in order to try and secure millions in lucrative government contracts. Now this all happened while the Minister of Employment was actively running the company. It's time
Can we do that?
When will the Minister admit that he is the real Randy and acknowledge that it's wrong to falsely claim Indigenous heritage and take contracts meant for Indigenous peoples and resign?
Can we do that? Is that legal in Canada now? I had Bannock once. Do I qualify for
the Minister of
government money?
Procurement Services.
Is that how that works under Liberal logic?
To ensure that Indigenous people are properly associated with the contracts that are procured. That's why we've established the very motion that's going forward. Members opposite want to criticize and be critical of the program, but it's essential to ensure that Indigenous people have the right, have the ability for economic success and integration so that they too can succeed, and that we get and we understand that those on the Indigenous list are managed appropriately and the procurement process is also taking transparent measures forward.
The honourable member from Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, today it was revealed that a company co-owned by the Employment Minister bid on federal contracts while claiming to be Indigenous owned. The company, Global Health Imports, has two shareholders. Perhaps three if you count the other Randy. But according to the Assembly of First Nations, the Liberals' Indigenous procurement program is being abused by shell companies, with the vast majority of those federal contracts going to non-Indigenous businesses. Will the Prime Minister listen to those leaders, call an investigation, and remove the Minister from Cabinet until the inquiry is finished?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
The article makes it very clear the association that was being referenced here did not get a contract. They were not listed on the Indigenous list, and we've taken the steps appropriately in the procurement to ensure that that doesn't happen, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
He wants to mute the mic.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's failed gun policies are putting Toronto at risk.
Oh, let's go, Jamil.
This year there have been 126 more shootings in Toronto compared to last year, and Peel Regional Police report seizing one illegal firearm every 36 hours. The Liberal MPs who were elected from the Toronto area should be here making noise about these problems, but they're silent. And why are they silent, Mr. Speaker? Because they've decided to back up the Prime Minister's failed policies. When will they stop choosing the Prime Minister over the people?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, our position as a Liberal Party, my position as a Toronto MP is simple. Let's keep the citizens of our cities safe. How do we do that? By ensuring that we have less gun violence on our streets. How do we do that? By shoring up our borders to prevent guns from crossing the border. The specific border services that party cut when they were in power prior to 2015. What we also do is we recognize the important impact on domestic violence that gunfare has. When we keep guns...
But it's not from law-abiding gun owners.
Cities in Canada, what we're doing is ensuring that domestic violence doesn't have a pernicious impact on women. That's how you keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member from Durham.
I want my friends and neighbors in Toronto to take note. This Liberal Justice Minister is looking back at things that happened over 10 years ago while he's been here for 9 years and takes zero responsibility for crime getting worse. Imagine that, getting elected to serve your constituents, sitting here for 9 years and can't take a single bit of responsibility for a problem that he should be trying to fix. Mr. Speaker, it's very, very clear. Crime is worse. The Liberal MPs elected to serve Toronto are failing to do their job. When will they stop choosing the Prime Minister over the people?
This is what a politician should strive to be like. Right to the point, clear and concise. Throw some W's down in the chat for support, man. That was phenomenal.
Mr. Speaker, our government works very effectively with law enforcement professionals across the country, including the regional police, the Peel Regional Police that my colleague referred to, the city of
He took the wind right out of his sails. Look at this.
Police. We've invested, Mr. Speaker, money that the Conservatives cut in the RCMP and border services to prevent illegal guns from entering the country. And Mr. Speaker, we're very surprised the Conservative Party would turn back gun control legislation designed to protect Canadians by making it legal again to have assault-style firearms on the streets of the country.
You can't buy assault-style firearms in Canada legally. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the video. I'd love to know what you guys think about the different highlights from question period, but also the beginning. I've shared my thoughts and comments along the way, and now's the time. If you guys would absolutely like, I'd love to know what you have to say. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.